Appreciate this opportunity to share about RESU Homes and what we do as a real estate investor in the Metro Detroit market and possibly expanding at some point in the future and maybe looking into Florida as our next location. I'd like to talk about today, what are distressed circumstances? So that's why, as a real estate investor, that's how we're able to make money and help people at the same time. And so I'd like to talk about today circumstances that lead to an opportunity for us to help someone by giving them a pile of cash for their home. And then we're able to take that property and shine it up, resuscitate it, bring it back to life, and get it back on the market. So a decedent's home, an inherited property, someone who's a family member who's moving to senior living, an out-of-state landlord, someone who's facing a divorce situation, a house where there's no insurance, house with foundation issues, maybe someone's facing mortgage foreclosure, someone who's behind in their property taxes, a reluctant landlord, and then just a category where I'm done with this. This is a property actually in Dearborn Heights. This was a decedent's home. This was a referral that came to us through an estate planning attorney. Ray mentioned wills and trusts and estate planning. Someone had passed away, and their relatives who was named in the trust to handle the estate met with their attorney. And as they were going through everything, they discovered that by meeting with the attorney, they didn't even know this, that their aunt had this house in Dearborn Heights, but she actually lived in Canton. When she moved to Canton, she kept her house in Dearborn Heights as a storage unit. So no one lived in it. She just stored all her extra personal property there. And so this was a house that was not being maintained. There's some foundation issues and other things with this house. So decedent's home is a great opportunity for us, one that has not been maintained, and the family's not quite sure how to handle it or what to do with it. This is actually a referral from Sean Riley here in our BNI group. This is a property where a daughter and son inherited a property. This one is in Garden City, I believe, if I remember correctly. And they were looking for an opportunity to get a certain amount of cash out. They started rehabbing the house, at least they wanted to. They started doing some demolition inside the kitchen. And as they started the process with their own personal lives, and they just decided it was too much that they could handle with what was happening. And so they were looking for someone, hopefully with a cash offer, that could meet what they were looking to get out of the property. And Sean has a great story about how he helped that happen for us to be the buyer for that property. Moving to senior living. So this is a house in Dearborn. At one time, it was a two-family flat in Dearborn. There are very few in Dearborn. You can't actually even do two families in Dearborn anymore in this area. And so it was actually a hot property for the neighborhood for an investor. And this came to us because we actually worked with a family member on another property, someone who was an out-of-state landlord on a property in Livonia. And they went to visit their mom and had nobody, none of all the children lived out of state. They always stayed in contact, but they hadn't been in the home for a couple of years. When they went in the home, they realized water was leaking through the roof. The basement had mold in it. Things were happening. Mom was just staying in one small area of the house. Had not gone upstairs in years to the other unit, and they just needed to get her out of there. So they actually helped her move into a senior living facility. And then they contacted me and asked if I could give them a cash offer for the house because they were all out of state and they just wanted to move as quickly as possible. So mom wouldn't try to go back home. And so we were able to help in that situation. So out-of-state landlord. This is a property that a young, seasoned, I might say, lady from Kentucky owned. She actually moved to Kentucky when she retired. This was her house that she had when she lived in Detroit. And a neighbor down the street had a daughter who needed a place to live. So the daughter moved in, paid rent for the first couple of years, and then paid rent every other month, and then every 6 months, and then didn't pay rent for 4 years. And eventually she just had to get out of that situation. She's getting property tax bills. She stopped paying the insurance. And she contacted us. We went to the house. She didn't even know there was a roof leak. She didn't even know that there was a water tank boiling over in the basement. Didn't know about the mold. Didn't know about a lot of the issues that were at this house. And so we helped her go through the process of getting the neighbor's daughter actually evicted. It was very unfortunate to go through that process. And after that was done, we were able to purchase the home and get it fixed up and back on the market. What's interesting, this was a neighborhood we normally don't work in, but I'm proud to say that once we did fix it and sell it, we were able to get the highest price for this neighborhood in the last 10 years. And that price was $61,000. So just let you know, this was not a high price neighborhood. And that's part of the reason why she hadn't sold it before, because it was a hard neighborhood that it was hard to get properties to move. Divorce. So this is a situation where a house actually sat empty for a couple years after the divorce. Because the husband and wife had an agreement in their divorce judgment of what they would do with the house, but neither one of them would do anything. And so eventually it started facing foreclosure, which motivated them both to work together finally to get the house sold. And we were a great buyer because we were able to move quickly. And in this situation, you might be, if you look and see a little bit on that front door, there's a green tag. That green tag was the city saying this house is vacant and you can't do anything without our permission. So we had to work with the city and do all we needed to do to be able to get this house back on the market. So no insurance. This is a house in a nice neighborhood in Detroit. It's called the Island View neighborhood. And but it was a house, multiple situations. It was a decedent's home at one point. It was an inherited house. All the relatives lived out of state. And over time, it just sat there. They thought eventually maybe they would come back and work on a project, but every year it got worse and worse. Roof problems, foundation issues, and you can see basically just all water damage, no insurance. So we were able to buy this house in its as-is condition. And as we started the project, we got a knock on the door one day from a neighbor, someone who had moved in from Boston. He was an architect, and he wanted a project to work on. So he said, have you thought about selling it? So we said yes. We sold it to him and moved on without hardly doing anything other than cutting down a few bushes. So sometimes the neighbors are paying attention to what you do. So here's a house in west east side of Detroit, right near River Rouge Park. This one had major foundation issues. There was a sewer line that collapsed underneath the back wall. And when that happened, the back wall started to sink into the ground. And so this was one that we worked on. I'm going to show a little more photos of this a little bit later in the presentation. So someone facing foreclosure. So this is a property where someone who was helping another family member. So they actually put the house in their name. And then the family member was supposed to be making the payments. Ended up not going the way it was supposed to. So the mortgage went into default. And we were able to help to negotiate with the lender down to a price that we could actually purchase the home and then get in there and fix it up, get it ready for the new homeowner. So behind the property taxes. So it's this situation where someone had this house as a rental for many years, and she was getting paid, but she had other situations where she needed that income. She needed that income for other things in her life that had come up after she had moved out of state. So she wasn't able to keep up with the property taxes. There was no mortgage on the property. And she ended up contacting us through some of our marketing efforts and just seeking help just to get out of the situation. And the last tenant had moved out, and she just didn't have the money to fix it back up for a new tenant. It was broken into, the hot water tank and the plumbing and the furnace were stolen. And there had been a fire in the garage where somebody had been squatting. So anyway, lots of issues. The main one was the property taxes weren't being paid. So we were able to buy that property and get everything righted again. So reluctant landlord. This is a story of a property in Farmington Hills, a 9-mile road, where there was a relocation. So husband and wife moved out of state because of a job opportunity. They really enjoyed fixing up the house when they had owned it. And so they thought they would just hold it as a rental property. It worked well for about 9 months. And then their property manager skipped out on them. They didn't even have the contact information for the tenant. And so they just reached out to, this is more than we can handle. So we actually contacted them through some of our direct mail marketing. Just happened to be at the right time at the right place. They contacted us and we were able to get in this home, and some major water damage had come up because there was a sump pump in the basement with no one paying attention. It wasn't working anymore, so there was a little flood. And anyway, we just dealt with that property. And for those who might know, this was the first property I brought to the BNI when I joined the chapters, I think almost 5.5 years ago now. It was a brand new project for us at that time. This is a property where the family was just done with this property. A couple of you've seen this before. This is where we had a river running through the family room. It was a concrete slab, but this particular lot at this property in Farmington Hills basically had water pressure, it's called hydrostatic pressure, was pushing water up out of the ground, and its favorite place was underneath the family room. And so we had to put a whole water system, French drainage system around the house and underneath the family room to take care of this water. The family was trying to do it. They even hired one of the best companies in Michigan, but that company made some errors. And so we came in and were able to find the right specialist to get this taken care of. And now there's a wonderful family in there, and they've been there for a couple of years. So again, decedent's home, inherited property, moving to senior living, not a state landlord, a divorce situation, house where there's no insurance, but there's problems, foundation issues, mortgage foreclosure, someone who's behind in property taxes, that reluctant landlord, or just, I am done with this. And I was sharing in the small breakout room that we had earlier that someone who's done with this, sometimes we bought a property for less than 10% of market value. They are just done with it, and that house usually has lots of problems at that point. I know it's kind of a fun fan favorite to see some before and after photos. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that house where we had a collapsed wall in the basement. So we have some before and after photos. So this house is actually on the market right now as we're talking. And we've had a couple good showings. We hope to have an offer here in the next day or two. And this is some pictures of the kitchen before, so old style and kind of much more modernized kitchen, as you can see here. So granite countertops, soft close cabinets, and the shaker look there. This is the living room as it looks now. We did not change any of the walls, so it's all the exact same layout, just updating the flooring, new painting, working fireplace now. And the bathroom was a nice teal color with kind of a green surround sound for the tub. So
Nice.
we have an updated bathroom there. Nice newer look, kind of the subway tile look for around the shower. The basement had been finished, but it had water issues. I'm not showing the back wall in these photos, but it's the back wall behind this wall that had collapsed. And so just updating the basement, getting it all refreshened and ready for be able to use as a nice basement. The backyard was just full of junk. So we had that all taken care of, and we had to do some new siding. And you can't see it, but it's a straw back behind the garage there. We just had a lot of work to do even on the outside. So reseeding. And there's another view of the front room. And there's a dumpster we had in the snow at the property, just getting that house cleaned out. We actually ended up filling two 40-yard dumpsters out of this, between the backyard and what was in this house. And so it was a big cleanout job. All right, so Nate with RSU Homes, where we resuscitate those houses, bring them back to life, and get them back on the market.